everybody, and welcome to video 2 in this Linux for Programmers tutorial series. In this video, what we're going to be doing is talking about common Linux commands and how the Linux file system actually works. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. So you can see that I've signed in to my virtual server right here. I went through how to do this in the previous video, so check that one out if you are not currently on this step. And the first thing that I want to talk to you about is a very common command, which is ls. Now, ls stands for list, and this is going to list the contents of the current working directory. Now, what is the current working directory? Well, in fact, to explain that, I'm just going to start by explaining what this entire line actually means. So this line right here that you're going to see a ton as we go through this video says root at localhost : tilde and then the number sign or the pound sign. Now, root right here simply stands for your user, or the user that is signed in to this Linux machine. So in this case, we signed in as the root user. Then the @ sign is simply signifying that the thing after is going to be the location you are signed into. We are currently signed into localhost, although oftentimes this will say the IP address of your server. Then it's going to say colon. Colon simply signifies that we're ending this like root at localhost thing. And then afterwards is going to show you the current working directory. Now, our current working directory is actually tilde. What this pound sign means is, okay, you are now ready to start writing commands after this pound sign. So it's just a delimiter between your working directory and the user that's signed into this machine. So anyways, tilde stands for our user's home directory. So every single user, and we can have multiple users on our Linux device, will have a home directory. And for each user, it will be in a different place, but the tilde will mean you are in that user's home directory. So right now we're in the root user's home directory. So when I type ls, this is going to print out the contents of the user's home directory. So when I do this, I type ls, you see that we get snap, test1, tim.txt, and you won't see these files. I've created them previously just for this tutorial, but it's just showing you all of the things in this directory. Now I want to talk to you about another common command that we're going to have to use to be able to start explaining how this file system actually works. So now we know how to list out files, but how do we actually navigate this file system? How do I move out of this home directory? How do I get into the folder test1 or the folder snap or look at this file tim.txt? Well, to do this, we use what's known as cd. Now, cd stands for change directory. You simply type cd and then the path that you want to go to or the directory that you want to move into. So if I would like to get inside of the test1 directory, what I can do is type cd test1, then press enter, and this will change my working directory to be tilde, which is my user's home folder, and then test1. Now inside of here, we can check the contents of this folder. So if I type ls, notice we see that there's a folder called test2. So if I want to cd into this folder, I can type cd test2, and now I can check the contents of this directory. So now I type ls, and notice this is where the file tim.txt is located. Now there's also a tim.txt inside of this main folder here, so don't get fooled, there's two tim.txt files, but anyways, I wanted to show you how that works. So now we're inside of the test2 folder. We see that tim.txt is here. There's no more folders to go into. So how can we move back out, or how can we move to the upper level directory or the parent directory of test2? Well, to do that, we can use cd again, but instead of having the name of the directory, we simply type ... Now, ... stands for go to the parent directory. 1 dot stands for the current directory, 2 dots stands for the parent directory. Now, don't get confused. 3 dots does not bring you up another directory above that. In fact, if you want to move up 2 directory levels, what you would type is cd ... /.. This is just delimiting this and telling you, yes, I want to go to the parent of this parent. So if I type cd ... this brings me to test1. If I type cd ... again, this brings me back to the user's home folder. All right, so now let's do something crazy. Let's type cd ... again, and let's move into what we're going to call the root file system directory. Now, the official name of this directory is the root directory, but it's kind of confusing because there is technically a directory called root. So when you just see a slash here, this means you are in the highest possible directory. So this is where everything is going to be stored. And in fact, if I type ls, you can see that everything is here. So we actually have all of the directories that are contained on this Linux machine. Now, again, slash is just the main upper level file system directory. Everything is stored inside of this directory. There might be a few exceptions to that, but that's getting outside of the scope of this tutorial. Anyways, you can see there's a bunch of folders here. I just want to talk to you about some of the main ones and what they mean because they're kind of important to understand. So I'm just going to quickly go through some of the important folders here, give you a quick, 1 or 2 sentence definition of what they are, and then we'll move forward into some more interesting things. So bin. The bin directory simply contains user executable files. That's all I need to say about that one. The boot directory simply contains files that are required to boot the operating system. The dev directory stores things related to hardware devices that are connected to this machine. So not drivers, but just information about hardware devices. etc contains the local system configuration files for the host computer. /home is the home directory storage for user files. So this is where it gets a little bit confusing and where I need to give a bit of an explanation, but the home folder is actually where all of our users' home folders are going to be stored. Now, it's weird because we have this home folder, but this home folder is not actually the home folder for our users. So in fact, if I cd into, not whom, but into home, and I type ls, you notice that we don't see a root folder. The reason we don't see a root folder is because the root user is a very special user in Linux. It is kind of like your super user. It is the administrator in a sense. And in fact, the home folder for the root user is located in a different place from all of the other users. It's located in the root file system and then /root. But if we were to have another user on our machine, so let's say we have the user named Tim or the user named Joe or whatever, then we would see folders inside of this home folder that were called Tim and Joe. And those folders would be those users' home folders. So /home / the username is where users' home folders are located, except for the root user. They had to make that confusing for us. Anyways, hopefully that's clear, but that is what the home folder is for, user files essentially. Then we have /lib. This contains library files that are required to boot the system, so similar to /boot. We have /media. This is where we're going to mount external and removable media devices, say like a USB. We have /mnt. This is where you would mount temporarily, I believe it's temporarily file systems. I'm not going to get into that because that's kind of confusing. /opt. This is optional files. Don't really need to talk about that anymore. We already talked about /root. /sbin. This stores binary files. These are actually system binary files, and they are executables used for the system administrator. We have /tmp. This simply stores temporary files. Anything inside of this folder can be deleted at a moment's notice. There are actually no notice whatsoever. It could just be deleted at any point in time. So don't store something in here that you want to permanently store. /usr. This is used for shareable read-only files. So for all users, they can look inside of there. And this includes executable files and stuff like that. /var. This is going to be used by a lot of database software, and this stores variable data files. Not really much more to talk about there. Now, of course, there's some more folders I didn't talk about. Not that important. You can look them up if you want, but those are the main ones. Anyways, now that we know that, let's go into our user's home folder. Now, remember, for our user, that's going to be root, although for other users, it would be located in the home folder. So we'll cd into root, shows the tilde, which means this is our home folder. And now let's learn how we can actually make some new files and folders and all of that. And in fact, before we do that, I'm going to show you my favorite command, which is actually the clear command. This is pretty straightforward. You can guess what it does when you type clear. It simply clears the contents of the screen. So that one's useful. I'm going to probably use that a lot through this tutorial series just to clean up some stuff on the screen. In fact, before I get into the next command, there's a few keyboard shortcuts that are going to be really useful for you guys to know. The first one is tab. So when you're trying to change directories or just trying to type out a directory, if you know what it starts with, but you don't want to type out the entire directory and you know it's relatively unique in the sense that there's not like a bunch of directories that have a very similar name to it, what you can do is type out the first few letters or even just the first letter of the directory name. So if I type cd and then te and hit tab, notice it's able to autocomplete this directory name because there's no other directory that starts with te. In fact, if I were to just type t and press tab, it's also to autocomplete. It's also able to autocomplete that as well. So this is very useful whenever you're trying to type out directories. try pressing tab after you type a few letters and it should just autocomplete it for you. Another useful one is the up arrow key. This will cycle through all of the commands that you've previously used, and then the down arrow key will go in the opposite direction. So you can see that you can just look at those very easily. The side arrow keys you can use to kind of like modify things on the current line. You can't actually use the mouse to like move your cursor around on the line. So just keep that in mind when you're on the command line. Pretty much everything comes as input from the keyboard. So anyways, now let's look at another command, and this is going to be to make a new directory. So right now, type ls, you can see we have test1 and tim.txt. Let's go ahead and make a new directory inside of this folder or inside of our working directory, and let's call this test2. Why not? Or to make it simpler, we could just call it like A, B, something like that. But to make a new directory, the command is mkdir. Pretty straightforward, stands for make directory, and you simply type the name of the directory afterwards. So we could type mkdir A. We do that. Now if I type ls, we see we have a directory called A. So let's cd into A. Now let's make another directory. Let's just call this one B. Now we can ls, we see we have B. Now we can go back into the root directory, and that is how you make a directory. Pretty straightforward. Next, I'm going to show you how we can make a file. So this method I'm going to show you right now will make an empty file. I'll show you how to add contents to the file afterwards, but this one is just for an empty file. So if you want to make an empty file, and oftentimes you actually do want to do this, you can use the command called touch. You simply do touch and then the name of the file. Usually you don't want to include any spaces or special characters in your file name. So I'm going to say touch, and then we'll just say new file.txt like that. If I do this, type ls, notice we now have new file.txt popping up as one of the contents for this directory. Now I'm going to show you another command. This one is really straightforward. It's called pwd. This prints the current working directory. So when I do that, notice we get /root. That is equivalent to the tilde because again, the tilde represents that we are in this user's home directory, which is /root. Now, if I want to make a file, or sorry, not make a file, if I want to read a file, what I can do is use a command called cat. Now, cat stands for concatenate. It actually does many different things. I'm going to show you a few examples in a second. But if I want to just read a file, I can type cat and then the name of the file. So in this case, let's say I want to read tim.txt. I can type cat and then tim.txt. And notice it tells me that the output of this file, or the contents of this file, sorry, is hello, my name is Tim. Now, if I try to read the file we just made, so new file.txt, notice we get nothing because, well, there was no contents in that file. So how do we add contents to that file? Very good question. I'm going to show you now. We can also use cat to do this. So if we want to add contents to a file, and in fact, this is actually going to concatenate or add to the end of the file, what we do is we type cat, then we type two of these, so you can call them arrows or greater than signs or less than signs or whatever you want, and then the name of the file that we want to add something to. So if I want to add some contents to new file.txt, I say cat, two of those little symbols, then new file.txt. Notice it brings my cursor to the next line, but does not terminate this command. And now it's prompting me to actually type something. So I'm just going to say this is a new file. Now that I've done that, I can press enter. And notice that when I press enter, nothing happens. So how do I actually stop this? You know, how do I get this command or get this cursor to stop running? Well, you just kind of have to know this. But the thing that you're going to do is type Control-D. So you're going to use that shortcut. That will end this, and then it will add those contents, so whatever you typed on these lines, to that file. So now, after you've typed Control-D to terminate that, you're going to type cat, and then the name of the file that you want to read the contents of, new file.txt. Notice we get this is a new file. Now, just to show you, if I go ahead and add some more stuff to new file, so let's just add last line, and then we do Control-D, and then we run this again. Notice it's going to concatenate to the end of the file and not override the file. So that is the basics of cat. That's how you read with cat. That's how you write contents into a file. Also, if the file does not currently exist, so let's say cat new file 1, we also could write directly into a file if it doesn't exist. So cat and then the two arrows and then new file 1.txt. It's going to put the cursor up again. Now I could just type, new stuff, Control-D. and we should see that is going to write into this file. All right, so now we can read this file. So cat new file and then 1.txt, and notice we get new stuff inside of that file. So there's some more stuff that you can do with cat. In fact, one of the most common things is to concatenate the contents of one file to another. So let's actually concatenate the contents of new file 1 to new file. So to do this, we're going to say cat, then we're going to say the file that we want to take the contents from. So this file won't change. So we'll say new file1.txt, then those two little arrows again, and then the file we want to add this to. So we're going to say new file.txt. Go ahead and press enter. That's going to run that for us. And now we can cycle through our commands. We can read new file, and notice it added the contents of new file 1 to the end of new file 2. So there's some more stuff that you can do with cat, but that is kind of the basics, and that's all I'll show for right now. Next thing that I want to show you is the mv command. This stands for move. So this is how you actually move a file. This one is really straightforward. You simply say move, and then the file name or even the directory name if you wanted to move an entire directory, and then to the location you want to move it to. So in this case, I want to move new file .txt, and I want to move this to, in fact, did we make a folder here? I think we made the folder called A. Yeah, we did. So let's move it to A. So mv new file.txt, and then A like that. Press enter. And now if I ls, notice that new file is gone. If I cd into A and I type ls, we see that new file.txt is inside of there. So that's the basics for moving. You can also move multiple files at the same time. You can say move, and then what file do we have here? tim.txt and new file 1.txt. We want to move this into A, or sorry, we need to go back a directory to do this. So cd ... and then move new file 1.txt and tim.txt to the folder A. If we do this, this should work. Type ls, notice all those are gone. Cd into A, ls, and all of them are there. Awesome. So now that we have that, I'm going to show you the copy command. So if we wanted to copy a file, we're inside of A. Let's say we want to copy tim.txt. We're going to say cp tim.txt. Again, this stands for copy. And then the name of the new file that we want to copy this to. So let's just say copy.txt. Press enter, ls. And now notice we have a file called copy.txt. And if we read this with cat, so copy.txt, we see hello, my name is Tim is the contents of that file. Awesome. So now we have learned how to create new files, how to create new folders. Let's learn how to delete them. So to delete a file, there's a command called rm. This stands for remove. There's a few different options here, but the basic is to simply just type rm and then the name of the file that you want to delete. Now, rm is specifically used for files, although there is a flag we can pass to this to delete folders. Now, to delete a file is what I'll show first. Let's say we want to delete that copied file. Say rm copy.txt. Now we type ls, and boom, that file is gone. Now, let's say you are a little bit nervous to be deleting something. You don't want it to just delete right away. Maybe you want confirmation. You could type rm-i. This stands for interactive. And what this will do is prompt you if you want to delete the file. So now notice it says cannot remove copy.txt, no such file or directory. Oh, that's because we already deleted it. But let's try to delete, say, tim.txt. So rm-i tim.txt. It's going to say remove regular file tim.txt. If you type y and press enter, it will remove it. If you type anything else, it will not. Now, when we ls, notice that file is gone. All right, so now I will show you how we can actually remove some more things as well. So let's say we want to remove a folder. So we have this folder B, right? We cd into B and ls. Notice there's nothing inside of ls. So let's cd out. And now let's delete this B folder. So to delete this folder, I can't simply type rmb. If I do this, it says cannot remove B because it's a directory. So to remove a directory, what you need to type is rm and then one or two different things. So if the directory is empty, you can type rm-d. This stands for directory, and then that will delete this directory B. Since it's empty, this will work, but if it is not empty, then you also need to delete the contents of the directory itself. So you would need to type rm-r and then the name of the directory. Now, -r stands for recursive, and this means recursively delete everything inside of this directory. So this is a dangerous command. Be careful when you run this, but it will delete everything inside of B and B itself if there's something inside of B, right? But since B is empty, we can just type rm-db, and then it will delete that directory. Type ls, notice B is gone. So that is how you remove directories, and that is how you remove files using rm. There's also a command rmdir. rmdir is identical to rm-d, so this will just remove an empty directory for you. rmdir cannot remove a directory that has any contents inside of it. To do that, you would need to use rm-r. I know this is a lot, but there's just a lot of information, and of course I'm not showing all of the details of these commands, just the ones that I think you need to know. All right, so now that we know how to remove directories, I'm going to quickly show you how we can remove something using pattern matching. So we have these two files, new file 1 and new file .txt. Let's say we had like 25 million text files. Obviously, I don't want to remove all of them by typing in all their individual names. Maybe I don't even know all their individual names. You know, I type ls, my screen takes like 10 minutes to fill it all. So if you want to remove everything that has a certain pattern, so in this example, every single test file, you can use what's known as pattern matching. Now, there's more advanced patterns than the one I'm going to show you here. But you can do something like rm star.txt, and the star simply means for anything. And the star simply means anything. So anything.txt, I'm going to delete. That's literally what this means. I could also do something like, test.star, and this means remove test dot and then any file extension for test. So let's do star.txt. And now notice I type ls, all of my files are gone. So that's a good way to remove all of the files that have a certain pattern. You would also do something like star.star, and that would literally remove all files and just not remove any directories. All right, so the last two things that I want to show you are the locate command and the find command. These are very useful when you're searching the file system for a certain file and you don't know if it exists or not. Okay, so I lied. I was going to show you the locate command, but I'm actually going to skip that one for now. I'm going to throw that in a later video because it takes a little bit of explanation. I'm going to show you a different command, though, called the find command. These two commands essentially do the same thing. They just work a little bit different and have a different efficiency associated with them. So the find command will search for a specific file or a specific directory, whatever you end up typing, in your current working directory. Now, you also can declare a different directory to search in, but if you want to search in the current directory, what you type is find dot -name, standing for I want to search for the name of a file and then the name that you're looking for. So in this case, let's say I'm looking for the file name a.txt. If I do that, notice it shows me now where a.txt is located from my current directory. So it's saying, okay, go into the /a folder. There's one called a.txt. There's also one right here called a.txt. Before this, I created a bunch of files just so we could do this. All right, so now let's say I want to find ab.txt. Great. Now, let's say I want to find all txt files. Well, let's do *.txt. And sorry, that's my bad. When you use pattern matching, you actually need to put these in quotation marks. So this will work now, but whenever you use an asterisk or some special character in the name, you need to just put it in quotes when you're using the find command. That's a small detail, but notice that now this works, finds all my text files, and notice I created a bunch of just random text files with these names. So anyways, that is kind of the basics of the find command. There's also another one that's interesting. This is the one that omits capitals. So notice that if I were to say, actually, let me go back here. If I were to look for a.txt, I don't find anything, right? But now if I change this flag here from name to iname, this means don't consider capitals. So look for any case. So if I say find .-iname a.txt, now it's going to find the a.txts that are lowercase because it's not considering the case. Now, that is how you look for files and how you ignore the case. The last thing I'll show you is how you look for directories. So let's say we're going to do find, we're going to do -type, and then we're going to type D, which stands for directory. Then we're going to say -name. Then we're going to type the name of the directory. Again, you don't need to memorize this. You can look up this kind of stuff, but just trying to show you the basics here. So find .-type D -name. We're looking for a directory. Let's find a directory called A. Notice we find one right there. Now, I think I deleted that B directory, so I don't think we're going to find it, but that is the basics of the find command. And actually, with that, I'm going to conclude this video. So this was kind of a high-level overview of Linux as a whole, how the file system works, the basic commands, and just how to be kind of comfortable navigating around and doing basic things. Of course, there is a lot more to know, as I'm going to cover in this series, but hopefully this gave you a really good start. And even after just watching this video, you should be a little bit more comfortable dealing with a command line system or command line machine. So anyways, if you guys enjoyed, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next YouTube video.